Financial grit, courage, discipline, and perseverance. I know, it sounds like something straight out of an army recruiting poster. But don't worry, I'm not here to try to recruit you to the military. I'm here to talk about the importance of developing our financial grit. The term grit was popularized by Angela Duckworth's 2016 book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. So the book is primarily focused on finding career success. I believe we can find relevant lessons to our financial lives as well. So in salute to developing our ability to grit through challenges, let me share with you 10 steps to developing our financial grit. And hi, if you're new to the channel, my name is Tay from Financial Tortoise, where we learn to grow our wealth slow and steady. Step 1 to developing financial grit. This is simple, yet actually the hardest step for most people. Show up. 80% of success in life is showing up. Woody Allen, when asked about his advice for young artists, said this: "My observation was that once a person actually completed a play or a novel, he was well on his way to getting it produced or published, as opposed to a vast majority of people who tell me their ambition is to write, but who strike out on the very first level and indeed never write the play or book." How many of us said we want to get better at something, but fail to take the first step? I want to look like Arnold, but I can't remember the last time I stepped into a gym. I want to get better with people, but we continue to isolate ourselves. I want to get better with money, yet fail to take the first step in looking at my spending. But if we want to get better with money, build our financial grit, the first step is to show up consistently. Money, like anything in life, consistency of effort over the long run is everything. To not give up as soon as we hit a roadblock, an obstacle, or just even a plateau in our progress. If I can be honest, building wealth is not complex. It's actually quite simple. Live below your means, stay out of debt, and invest in appreciating assets. But it's hard because many of us quit too early and too often. Or worse yet, we never start at all. So take the first step and show up. Even more than the effort a gritty person puts on a single day, what matters is that they wake up the next day and the next, ready to get on that treadmill and keep going. Step 2 to developing financial grit. Define our why. Define what we want to achieve financially, but more importantly, why we want to achieve it. 3 bricklayers were asked, "What are you doing?" The first said, "I'm laying bricks." The second said, "I'm building a church." And the third said, "I'm building the house of God." The first bricklayer had a job, the second had a career, the third had a calling. When someone asks what we're doing with our money, similarly we can answer, to save money. Another person can say, to pay my bill. But a person who has defined their why will be able to say, to build a cottage of my dreams and spend the next 10 years of my life writing that novel I always dreamt about. Throughout my financial journey, I've done a lot of soul searching. Why does money evoke such an emotional response from me? Why do I think about it so much? And I realized that a lot has to do with my upbringing. My family experienced 2 back-to-back bankruptcies in my early teens. As a result, I experienced being evicted from our home and observing my parents constantly being stressed about not having enough. Of course, I wished I didn't have to experience this level of financial stress growing up. However, what is done, and I'm thankful to my parents despite it because they did the best they could with the resources they had at the time. However, what these experiences taught me was that I would never want to place my family in a similar compromising situation if I could help it. And that is my why. I'm not saving money just for the sake of saving, but I'm saving so I can provide to my kids financial security that I wasn't able to experience growing up. So if you want to develop financial grit, define your why. What is your inner drive that evokes certain emotions? So strong that it will fuel you when you hit that wall you're guaranteed to hit in your financial journey. Grit is about working on something you care about so much that you're willing to stay loyal to it. Step 3 to developing financial grit. Ignore the highlights. Nobody wants to show you the hours and hours of becoming. They rather show you the highlight of what they become. In the world of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, we have no shortage of highlights we can literally spend our whole day over. It's our natural inclination. Who wants to spend hours or days trying to understand the complex and long path to someone's final destination? We want the final edited version. Thus, when our kids ask how my wife and I met, we naturally give them the edited version. Mommy was sitting behind daddy at church service, and as soon as he turned around, it was love at first sight. Happily ever after, off to the rainbow, and popped out 2 kids. And when they start asking probing questions, we realized that it was a bit more complex than that. So you guys started dating right away? Well, not exactly. It was a year later. Why? Well, it's complicated, you see. Nothing in life is ever simple as the highlight reels. We like simple things, but the reality of how someone became a billionaire or how someone started a successful business is oftentimes a lot more complicated. But when we're constantly exposed to everyone else's highlight reels, we allow the edited version to become our reality. Then worse, we start to give excuses on why we can't do something. You see an edited version of someone having started a successful business and you think, man, I don't have an idea like that, without realizing that this person might have had 5 failed business ideas he gritted through before he got this one right. You see an edited version of a person who retired at the age of 45. And you're dejected because you're 44 and you haven't saved a penny. Not realizing that this 45-year-old might have had tons of ups and downs that she had to navigate and grit through to arrive at her destination. The shared mantra of gritted individuals is this: no whining, no complaining, no excuses. If we want to prevent excuses to creep up, minimize our exposure to highlight reels. Or at least realize that highlights are exactly just that, highlights. They don't tell the whole story. You can find inspiration from it, but don't assume that is the complete picture. Step 4 to developing financial grit. Embrace deliberate practice. Without deliberate practice, you can only maintain your current abilities. Brute force grit can take us to a certain point, but sooner or later, if we don't have the skills and abilities to navigate the challenges in front of us, we will lose steam. The money journey, just by its nature, requires a certain set of skills. Spend tracking, budgeting, investing, etc. And when you don't have those skills, no amount of grit will get you over that hump. And one of the best ways to develop those skills is through deliberate practice. This is how experts actually practice. Rather than focus on what they already do well, experts try to improve specific weaknesses. They intentionally seek out challenges they can't yet meet. Benjamin Franklin talked about in his autobiography how in order to improve his writing, he would collect the best essays from his favorite magazine and he'd read them, reread them, take notes, and then hide the originals. Next, Franklin would rewrite the essay in his own words, trying to mimic and hopefully write better essays than the original. He wanted to be a better writer, so he deliberately focused on his weaknesses and drilled them. In the same way, if you find that you're lacking financial knowledge, use deliberate practice to get better. The idea of tracking your spending overwhelms you? Then that is probably the ideal place for you to focus your energy to get better at. Download all your spending for the past 3 months and go through them line by line, categorizing them, and then assess how you're doing. If you've never used a spreadsheet, no better time to try. Grit is a byproduct of ability. When you feel confident in your skills and abilities, your financial grit to overcome challenges will get stronger. Trying to do things they can't yet do, failing, and learning what they need to do differently is exactly the way that experts practice. Step 5 to developing financial grit. Embrace 1% better. You harness all your energy to improve your money skills. But it's taxing. The more time you spend on your spreadsheet, the more you feel like you know less. You try categorizing your expenses, but you realize that there are new categories you never even realized existed. It's exhausting and you're ready to give up. This is where you want to find contentment in the idea of 1% better. One form of perseverance is the daily discipline of trying to do things better than we did yesterday. It's exhausting if we're telling ourselves we need to master a certain skill overnight, that we need to know the ins and outs of index funds, bonds, and options trading after one evening of watching YouTube videos. It's not only exhausting, we're completely setting ourselves up for disappointment. Angela Duckworth gives a good example by describing a discussion with her daughter. If my daughter says to me, "Mom, I shouldn't practice my piano today because I'll never be Mozart," I'll say in reply, "You're not practicing piano to be Mozart." We aren't trying to become a personal finance expert overnight. We're just trying to get better than yesterday, last week, and last month. Just 1% better. And knowledge works in a compounding manner. The 1% will pile on, and before we know it, we know 50% more than we knew last year, and 100% more than we knew 2 years ago. Practice grit in your knowledge building. Don't get disheartened in your knowledge journey. If you know slightly more than yesterday, that is something to be celebrated. Step 6 to developing financial grit. Embrace failure. But even when you're incrementally getting better, the natural process of growth lends itself to inevitable failure. You'll try tracking your spending for the next 3 months, but life happens. So you fizzle out after a month, and you feel guilty about starting the process again. However, understand, the only way to truly succeed is to embrace failure. The most successful people are not the ones who never fail, but the ones who learn from their failures. I've failed so many times in my life, especially when it comes to my finances. Thus, the reason I feel I can talk about money to you today on this channel isn't because of my success, it's because of my failures. I didn't learn how to track my expenses until well into my 20s. I borrowed way too much money at the worst interest rates than I like to admit. If you name it, I've probably done it and more. Thus, my path to current financial stability is a winding path filled with a bunch of detours, getting lost, and backtracking. It's far from a direct linear path to success. But that is what life is, and that is why financial grit is so important. You want the ability to say, well, okay, that didn't go so well, but I guess I'll just carry on. Step 7 to developing financial grit. Embrace optimism. But facing failure is hard. It takes a lot of energy and effort to recover from failure. Therefore, another tool you want to have in your toolkit to hone your financial grit is to embrace optimism. In one study, elite swimmers who were training for the US Olympic trials were asked to swim his or her best event and then deliberately told they actually swam a bit slower than what was recorded. There were swimmers who took the noose very hard and actually swam their next lap slower. Then there were swimmers who actually took the noose on the chin and did better in their next lap. The swimmers who did better learned to explain the hard news optimistically. This was a typical response of those who mastered the art of optimism. Well, I don't really think in terms of disappointment. I tend to think that everything that happens is something I can learn from. And optimism is a skill that can be learned and improved on. It isn't something that some are born with and some aren't. Of course, you don't want to take it so far as to be delusional, because that's just not seeing reality. But if you can practice what I like to call pragmatic optimism, your ability to reframe bad failures and thus come out the other end stronger improves. When I get knocked down, I'll get back up. I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I'll strive to be the grittiest. Step 8 to developing financial grit. Celebrate small wins. One of my favorite strategies to maintain optimism is to ensure that we're celebrating our progress, our 1%. our small wins. Maintaining financial grit through all the ups and downs is naturally hard. The first time my wife and I tried the envelope budgeting system, where you use cash 100% for all your discretionary spending, we ran out of money halfway through the month. We were forced to scrounge around for food in our apartment for the last 2 weeks. But instead of being discouraged, we decided to celebrate the fact that we were able to stick to the budget we set out. It wasn't smooth. We didn't smooth out our spending evenly across the 30 days. But what mattered was that we were able to do it. No matter how small that achievement was, we found contentment in that. At the start of an endeavor, we need encouragement and freedom to figure out what we enjoy. We need small wins. We need applause. So use any excuse to celebrate your small wins. Ate packed lunch 3 out of 5 days this week? Way to go. That was better than the week prior. Celebrate with a small meal out. Open up an investment account today? Amazing. You're surely on your path to building wealth. Treat yourself with a gift. Of course, try to keep it small. Step 9 to developing financial grit. Surround yourself with gritty people. If you're around a lot of people who are gritty, you're going to act grittier. The fact is that if we're trying to run this race by ourselves, it gets real hard real fast. And the world's best performers understand this fact. Therefore, Olympic swimmers intentionally surround themselves with other great swimmers. What kind of oddball gets up every day at 4 in the morning to go to swimming practice? These must be extraordinary people to do that sort of thing. But the thing is, when you go to a place where basically everybody you know is getting up at 4 in the morning to go to practice, that is just what you do. It's no big deal. It becomes a habit. When we're surrounded by people who exhibit certain habits, watching how they spend their money, constantly studying money, and aiming to grow their wealth, those habits will naturally rub off on us. Just like Olympic swimmers who don't think much about waking up at 4 in the morning to swim laps because all their friends are doing it, we won't think much about watching our spending when people around us are also doing it as well. So be intentional about who you surround yourself with. Financial grit doesn't just happen by accident. It is developed intentionally. In this case, intentionally who we surround ourselves with. Step 10 to developing financial grit. And this is my personal favorite. Embrace the marathon. Grit is living life like it's a marathon, not a sprint. The reason why I love the fable Tortoise and the Hare, and the reason why I model this whole channel on that fable, is because I believe full-heartedly that the most of life's greatest achievements are accomplished when we approach life like a marathon. Marathons are not won by quick sprints. They're not won by some quick life hacks and shortcuts. You have to keep one foot in front of the other and keep on going for a long period of time. Enduring the ups and downs, ignoring everyone and everything around us, and just keep on going. Slow and steady up the hill of progress. There is no shortcut to excellence. Embrace the marathon. Thank you guys for watching. In the theme of slow and steady, please check out my other video here, Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Until next time, all the best.